This is my impression based on the information I've read. His behavior seems to evolved or devolved to the point of almost megalomania. Again, these are from people who have left the church saying that he became quite cruel and quite brutal to people. And I can't back any of that up.
Yeah, you know,
but there's enough people that say that.
It's hard. It's hard when anybody leaves a group like, you know, Scientology you kind of have to grain of salt it. You know, you want to believe that stuff. I think that a lot of the stuff about Scientology that you read, it's kind of like, it's believed because, like, you kind of want to believe in this, like, big shadow organization. You know, it's the same sort of thing as, like, the Illuminati, almost, to me, where it's
or the
like,
New World Order.
Yeah, where you're like, oh, gosh, a shadow organization, that probably exists, and they're, like, super evil, and everything is the worst, and everybody's in on it, and it's this huge conspiracy. So I think that you have to be careful on, like, both sides. I think that there's probably a middle ground truth behind every story.
Yeah, there probably is.
Absolutely.
But I do have to say, though, having met a few Scientologists in my time, they tend to be pretty devoted to the church, and they seem to be the kind of people who really, really want to stay with the church. And I'm thinking, what it must take quite an extreme thing to drive them out.
Yeah.
In many cases.
I mean, I think that you find that within all religions. I know a lot of
agree.
Christians who are really dedicated to the church, and it's kind of the same argument.
Yeah.
Either way.
Well, let's get back to the story here.
Anyway, so in other words, he's becoming more cruel. He's
and brutal.
He's obviously going the wrong direction. He's getting more Thetans in him.
Well, Michelle, in her role, her official role, putting herself between her husband and the staff, to the point of running interference for everyone. And again, this is my interpretation, is an attempt to spare them from the actions that she's seen him, presenting to others.
Sure.
Now, obviously, that's going to take its toll. That's going to wear someone down. And it seems to have done that to Michelle. And that actually helps it lines up with the events that take place before she disappears from the public eye. In 2006, Michelle was given the task by David of creating a new organization board, or again, as everything seems to be shortened in this religion, org board. They call it the org board.
Org board. I like it.
Originally, L. Ron Hubbard had created the organization board, which, as I understand, was 7 divisions of the church that had different functions and duties. And for reasons that I don't know, David had decided that it needed to be reorganized and restructured, and he had assigned this task to several people. Every time somebody came back with something, he rejected it. He didn't like what they gave, and so he finally gave it to his wife and said, "You can do this."
That seems like the kind of case of like, I don't like it, change it. Well, what do you want? I don't know, I just don't like it, change it.
Well, that's exactly it. So obviously, it sounded to me like there was actually sort of a group effort by Michelle and a few other people to put together a plan that.
But she was in charge of that.
Yeah, and the thing about it is like, at a certain point after the third or fourth rejection, I think they should have gone to David and said, "Hey, you need to be in this group, because sending us off to waste our time and then you reject it. I mean, just come in here and tell us what you think and what you want."
Well, but that's the hard part. I mean, again, we made the analogy of a corporate structure. You see that in corporate institutions, and you think this would be so much simpler if. But that's just not the way it happens.
Yeah, it's too bad, though.
But here's the thing. Michelle finished the task. And she went ahead and began to tell people what the changes were and give them their new jobs based on those changes. She did this without running this by David first, which appears to have been a giant problem.
Apparently so, yeah.
And at the same time, so these are two events running in tandem. While she was doing that, David had evidently gone to stay in Los Angeles for a period of time, and she had taken the opportunity to renovate their living quarters, and they lived at what is known as Gold Base, which is, it's in Riverside County, California, and that meant that, of course, all their stuff had to be boxed up and moved around and set aside. And when he came back and he found out what his wife had done with both the org board and the renovations.
You keep saying org borg, but it's org board. They're not Cylon creatures from Star Trek. Borg. They're bored. Org board.
I like the sound of Org Borg better. Though.
I do too.
Org board.
I just like to clarify, they're not Borgs.
Okay. Well, when he got back and he found out what his wife had done, he was supremely pissed. Not happy at all. And he stripped her of her job title.
Okay.
And he assigned her a handler.
Oh.
She was seen in 2007 at her father's funeral with her handler in tow, and that was it.
Yeah,
she wasn't seen again in public from that point forward.
Yeah, and I think she actually, between this incident in 2006 and August...
It was in December of 2006 is when it happened. So we're looking at a 8-month period.
No, she actually disappeared not long after this, and then the only time she reappeared was in August 2007
Yeah,
with
that was her last public sighting.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then has not been seen since.
Mm-hmm. The official statement, the official line from the Church of Scientology is that Michelle's fine.
She's fine. She's fine. Just stop questioning it. She's fine.
Yeah. She's working on a special project for the church.
It's so special.
Which is completely outside of the public eye.
Yeah, she's... Listen, she's just taking some time. This is happening on the laptop in home. I mean, she spent all that time on the renovations. She may as well be enjoying them. It's totally fine. It's fine. It's fine. She's fine. Everything is fine. That's my interpretation of that statement.
Okay.
Just saying.
Do either of you know who Leah Remini is?
I don't want to say.
Actually, I didn't know her by name. I had seen her on TV a few times, and I had not realized she was a Scientologist.
Yeah. Leah Remini, she plays the wife on the TV show The King of Queens. And until about a year ago, she was a member of the church. She had also developed a friendship with Michelle.
I bet Michelle was her handler, right? I mean...
No, she wasn't her handler.
Wasn't she the... Oh, no, I'm sorry, liaison is the word I was looking for.
She might have been, because
she might have been a
celebrity,
Leah. Remini, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, were you going to mention that Scientology has this place in L.A. that they call the Celebrity Center?
No, I wasn't going to go into that.
Yeah, that's where the celebrity... Well... I saw this BBC News thing about it was like a documentary about the Scientologists, and they interviewed Leah Remini, and this was before her break with the church, and she was just all just glowing about the church and how wonderful it was. And they interviewed her at the Celebrity Center.
Well, and she's not so glowing about the church because obviously she's left.
Yeah,
and she was friends with Michelle. She is one of the few outspoken people who has asked about Michelle's whereabouts, vocally and rather publicly. She went so far as in 2013 to file a missing persons report with the Los Angeles Police Department saying, this woman's disappeared.
I guess if you haven't seen like a close friend for like, what is it?
6+ years?
6 years or so, you probably start to get suspicious.
Yeah, and I think the reason she got angry and left the church is that people were just stonewalling her and brushing her off.
Stonewalled and brushed aside.
It's like, why can't you just give me an answer? You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very simple question. You think it'd be a very simple answer.
Where is my friend?
Yes. Yeah. Well, the Los Angeles Police Department investigated, and they say that they met Michelle. Okay. And that she's fine.
Mm-hmm. From what I read, I haven't read that they actually went to her home, but they did actually speak to her in person.
They spoke to her in person. The information I had said that the detectives had confirmed that they had met her and knew who she was, and that yes, she was fine.
So we're saying this is a case of like one woman being like, well, I don't really want to be friends with that person anymore, so I'm gonna stop returning her phone calls. And then that person being like, she's dead. Right? That's what happened.
Well,
no, that is an theory? Interpretation, okay. Yes.
That's not a fair one, though, because, I mean, Leah Remini they would have events and all sorts of things like that, including major ones. What was the wedding that her husband, David Miscavige, was the best man at? That was for...
Was it Tom Cruise?
I think it might have been Tom Cruise.
It was Tom Cruise.
And that was since 2007, so...
But his wife wasn't there.
Oh.
Yeah, and Leah
Remini
was there, and his wife wasn't there, and that made her really suspicious.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing.
For a pretty reasonable...
And they used to exchange Christmas cards and gifts and stuff like that, and that ceased.
Well,
stopped,
I guess
gone.
the thing that's like a little weird about that is that like the excuse that the Church of Scientology is giving, right?
The reason?
Is that she's fine, she's just working on something out of the public eye, but that doesn't mean that like you stop going to these social events, right? It doesn't mean you stop calling your friend, even if, okay, fine, like let's say that also she doesn't want to be friends with this woman. It doesn't mean that like you don't go to a wedding at which your husband is the best man. It doesn't mean that you stop going to these galas and things like that, or even just like internal parties. It means that you like take a step back out of the public eye and like stop giving press conferences, maybe. But
well, we'll get into some reasons for why it could be such an extreme removal from everything.
Is it she's becoming Tom Cruise?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
not at all.
Thank God. There can only be one Tom Cruise.
Okay. Well, and quite obviously, we've told the story. Now we're at our theories.
Yeah.
Okay. I have essentially 3 theories here for us. The first of which is not the happiest theory, which is that she's dead.
Murdered by Tom Cruise, no doubt.
No, don't say that.
Stop it.
Don't even joke about that.
Yeah.
It is entirely possible that she's passed away. Now, I'm not pointing fingers to say that somebody killed her or ordered her death or how she died or anything like that. But for somebody to disappear that completely usually requires that they are no longer living.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some stuff about her husband where he has said that he wanted her gone forever. And I've also seen things that said that before everything went to hell in a handbasket, she was extremely unhappy. So, to me, it's entirely possible that she might not be here anymore, but I have, there's this weird thing about, well, the church was all she knew and that's her entire life.
Well, that's true, yeah.
So where does that leave us if she's no longer among the living? Well, maybe she took her own life. Okay, so let's run down this. Is that
it's always possible, I mean.
Okay, she is at the top. She is second in command for all intents and purposes, and then her world gets turned upside down, and she is shunned from power. Well, she doesn't have the option to leave the church in her mind, because everyone she knows in her entire life is based in the Church of Scientology.
Sure.
And she probably actually doesn't have a lot of useful skills that could be applied in the outside world either.
I think useful is the wrong term. Marketable, in knowing how to put that out in the world to make yourself an employee of some place is probably a better way to put that.
I'm more, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think we've got into this a little bit, but, like I said, she couldn't just leave the church, because people who leave the church are ostracized by anyone who is still in the church. And if every person that you know is a member of the organization, where does that leave you? You're denounced. Imagine trying to people do it. But for someone who's been in that organization for that length of time at that age, I don't think that's conceivable.
Yeah, the thing about it, a lot of the people that have left are people who have, with some obvious exceptions, there's people who went in as kind of like adults.
Mm-hmm.
And once they left the church, they still had family who were outside the church and friends that they used to know that they can go back to.
They had a support structure.
Whereas this person was in it from the very beginning and probably didn't know anybody who wasn't a Scientologist. At least that was not friends with anybody.
Exactly. So her resources are limited outside the church.
Yeah, it would have been trying to leave the church for her would have been a tough thing.
Here's the problem with Michelle being dead theory.
I have a problem with it.
Well, I have a lot of problems with it, but my major problem with it is that the Los Angeles Police Department says they met her.
Yeah.
Well, if she's dead, how do they meet her?
Well, I've seen pictures of her, and it's not like she's so
unique in appearance
looking that it would be hard to, with the right makeup artist and some good sunglasses. She looks kind of normal to me. She's not. There are just pictures of her, and they're all kind of like crappy pictures. And, it'd be easy to just say, even, like on the missing reports flyer or missing persons flyer, the picture of her is like not good. Like it could be anybody. I have friends that could look like that. Well, and
the cops would have never. These police officers who went to meet her would have never had occasion to meet her before.
Right.
So the only thing they could go off is a photo.
Would be photos.
Which. Like you said, if there's I'm going to say a double.
Yeah.
They might have.
If there was a double, then we can say that maybe this theory has a leg to stand on. But that's really, to me, pushing it.
I don't know. I guess for me, my big problem with this theory is that, it's super easy. This is a very insular religion, right? With a lot of things that people don't understand. So it's easy to say, it's part of our religion that, autopsies not happen on bodies, right? Okay. Easy. And then it's very easy to say, oh, she slipped and fell. And it's super tragic that she's dead now. It doesn't make sense for an organization to cover up a death when you, to just, lie about her being alive, for instance, right? When it's so easy to be like, oh, she was having a hard time and mixed pills. Or there's so many different accidental death things that could happen. You stage a car accident, for Christ's sake. It's so easy to just have all of these things, especially for an organization or religion as large as Scientology, that even if her death was under mysterious circumstances, you can make it look reasonable and then just say, no, you're not having an autopsy, we're going to cremate her, and then that's it. Right. She'll come back in another life, and if she wants to tell you then she'll tell you then. But I just have such a hard time with the let's just carry on like she's alive. That for me, that's the biggest part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, and also, I think she's probably alive because the cops are, detectives and actually met her, and they're not babes in the woods. These guys realize that they probably had some way to verify that she was actually who she said she was.
How?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I gotta ask.
Would be my only guess.
Driver's license.
Do you think that when a cop is going to check on a missing persons report and the person shows up, the first thing they do is whip out the ink pad and say, "I want your fingerprints"?
I think it depends on the situation. I don't have the problem Joe has. I'll be honest with you. If somebody says here's my ID and oh, I've lost a little weight and dyed my hair. I know it's weird, but it's LA, so that's what happens.
It happens all the time. Have a little lipo or something.
I definitely have had IDs in the past where I've been well, I know I've lost 20 pounds. It's it doesn't really look like me so much anymore. And they're we'll get a new one, and you're okay, I will. If she has all of the information of that person, she passes that person.
they could find somebody who looked just like her.
Have you seen pictures of her?
Yeah.
It would be super easy in LA especially to find somebody who looked like that, to me at least.
But the problem with this is that once you've found this double and you've fooled the police, then you have somebody you have to murder.
No. You pay her enough money. I mean, like, give her a couple $1 million and...
Or if she's a member
That's also
of the church, then... there are ways to convince people that that's part of their duties as a member. I mean, I don't want to belabor this too much.
But what I'm saying, we shouldn't.
None
I'm just
of
saying
us really
that
like this theory.
No, none of us do.
No, none of us like it. I'm just saying that creates another loose end. Even if you pay her $1 million, even if she's a member of the church, that's a big old loose end.
It is.
And I think that there's no real reason to believe that she's dead, personally. Because Scientology, whatever you say about it, and people say a lot of bad stuff about it. There's no record of any Scientologist ever murdering anybody.
Not that I know.
Not that I know. Or the church murdering people.
Let's move. Yeah, the church.
Yeah.
A good way to put it.
People.
We're going to move forward to the next, which is that the church is telling the truth. It's completely possible that what they say is accurate. And I know Devin is shaking her head.
I have problems with this theory too. No, I get it.
Bear with me.
I'm bearing.
Okay. We've already talked about how much of Michelle's life was and is and was about the church. Here's what we need to consider is that maybe it is true that she is working in the background pursuing projects for them, and she just doesn't want to be in the prying eyes of the press and the congregation. And bear with me. There's a couple of things about the church that I want to go into that may help explain some of this. We've talked already about auditing, that audit process. There's also two other practices that I've read about. One is called introspection rundown, and the other one is sec check. Okay. These practices have been legally reviewed because people have raised some concerns and issues about them, and there is allegations that they are processes that are used for indoctrination or re-indoctrination into the church. And it's possible that Michelle went through these processes. I'm not saying that she did, but here's what they are. Is introspection rundown is a process that is used specifically to help with people who have, according to the church, psychotic episodes. It could be construed that her behavior prior to everything that happened at the end of December of 2006 was a psychotic episode, and she was treated for that. And after she was treated, she took up another job in the church that had less stress. So the public and the job was too much.
Yeah, but do you have any idea what introspection rundown actually is?
It's a muddy mess. I don't want to go into it, but it is something where the church uses some techniques to help people that are having some psychotic issues. And I didn't go too far into it, and I think, again, this is one of those things that we've got to kind of take the line of, if you want to really delve into it, I'm going to leave that up to folks to go onto their own. But the other thing that she could have gone through is the one that we talked about called sec check. And sec check is, according to my research and the things that I've come across, is where the security personnel of the church will put people through repeated interrogations, and these interrogations are designed to elicit confessions or repentance or even submission for deeds and misdeeds to help you reset and come back to center. So she could have gone through that, and maybe she gave in, maybe it worked, I don't know, and then based on that, they put her in another place outside of everybody's purview. You're freaking out over there.
I am. You're right. And there's a lot of things that I want to say that I'm just going to go ahead and not say. But I do just, the problem that I have with this is similar, is that, like, you don't miss your friend's wedding because you're going through this stuff, right?
Well,
you don't disappear for 6 years because of this stuff.
I don't think she's voluntarily going through this. It doesn't sound like sec check is something that you voluntarily...
No, it's absolutely not.
But if the whatever she went through, whatever process, if she went through some kind of process, she came to a revelation. So let's just run down this avenue. She comes to a revelation of these are the things that she needs to do. And I'm going to use this phrase, and it might light some people's hair on fire, to repent for her misdeeds against the church and her husband. Then she needs to serve the church, and she needs to do it in her way. There's historical accounts of people joining churches and abandoning everyone they know and leaving everything they know behind, and convents or crusades or whatever it may be, and going somewhere completely different and cutting off all communication because that doesn't let them do what they need to do for themselves and what they believe.
I guess my argument against that is that that's not the church isn't then also telling the truth about that. Right? I think it's one thing to say, oh, she's taking a back burner role. It's totally normal. It's another to say there were some problems and we've worked through them and whatever. I think that there's just more explanation that you can do, and there's definitely a PR way to do it, right? It's not like you're she had a mental breakdown and then we cleansed her and she's fine now. I think that there are PR ways to say that. And
but here's the thing. We have seen not in the Church of Scientology, not in religion. Let's just spin to politics for a second. We have seen things happen in politics that were strange or untoward or whatever they were, and somebody came in to do damage control. And the initial description or explanation, whatever their initial concept of solving the problem was, made it worse.
Yeah.
But once that was there, they were screwed. They had to try to stick to it because the line is, here's my explanation. Don't waver from that. Because if you waver from it, then you're opening up a bigger can of worms, and you've got to stick with it.
I just think that you can build on their initial thing, right? Their initial thing was, well, she's taking a back burner position, and that's fine because you build on that. If this, if she did go through sec check or did do this introspection rundown, is, essentially in the Scientology version of a convent, whatever that may be, maybe she went back to Sea Org, maybe she, there are just so many different options that builds on the taking a back burner, and it gives the public at least more of a sense of believable and real, as opposed to she's taking a back burner role. What? No, you want more information? No, there's no more information. She's just out of the public eye.
But there are a number of things within the Church of Scientology, and for people in general. I'm not going to make this just about the church.
Sure.
Where you want to keep things private.
Absolutely.
Again, I'm not trying to defend if this is true.
Right.
But people have, I have a private life. There are things that I do in my life that I don't want to talk about, and I don't want other people to know about. And so I just don't talk about it.
Sure.
So it's conceivable to say, yeah, the world wants to know. Screw the world. They don't get to know. It's my life.
I think there's an end to that, though, right? You don't get to say that if you're the president of the United States, for instance, right? So if you're the leader of a large, powerful church, the Pope doesn't get to say that. The Pope doesn't get to say I don't know, I just took a sabbatical for whatever. I think a great example is the Pope resigning. He couldn't just be nah, I just want to take a more of a back burner role. He had to say here are some specific reasons, and whether they were true or not, whether they were the main reasons or not, he came up with some reasons for that. So I think that's my big problem with this theory. I have problems with all the theories, I'll be honest with you. This theory is that you give small specifics at the very least. If you're part of a public organization in the public eye, for whatever reason, you have that obligation to your community to explain it a little bit, at least.
Well, and I know we've kicked the crap out of this dead horse, but Joe, do you have any final thoughts on this theory?
Well, yeah, it's crap because, if
confidently
she was,
said.
Yeah. If she was doing work in the background, and she's still in good terms with the church and everything, everything's okay. Okay, meantime, there's all this stuff whirling around the internet saying, gee, what happened to Michelle? The simplest thing would be for the church to just produce her.
That's true.
The church should just say, and Michelle, go call a press conference and let everybody know you're okay.
Just say, hey, I'm cool. Chill.
Just show up on TMZ.
That's all you have to do. Like truly, post one selfie and you're fine.
Yeah, people are getting all twitchy about this, Michelle. So just get out. We're going to get you back out there a little bit, and so there's just no conceivable reason for them to be stonewalling.
I'm in agreement with you as well. This is a weird one. Mm-hmm. We have, and this is a very short list of theories, but we're really going into them here. Is our final theory is that she's locked up somewhere. Mm-hmm. And this
is a popular theory.
This is
there.
Far and away the most popular one, and it's with good reason.
Okay.
Your hair is on fire.
It is. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I'm gonna lay out some accountings, and this is from that Vanity Fair article, as well as a couple of other articles that I found online, and these are accounts from people who have left the church. We have a former church member by the name of John Brousseau, and he came forward and he said that Michelle is being held at a location. It's known as the Church of Spiritual Technology, or the acronym is CST. Mm-hmm. We can't get rid of the acronyms.
Right.
And it's located in, north of San Bernardino near Lake Arrowhead, which is in California.
Yep.
Yeah.
As most of their locations, their major locations are. And you might remember earlier when we were talking about some of the divisions, I had talked about the RDC, the one who uses legal motions to protect their rights and their copyrights and all that. Well, all of that stuff is owned by CST. So RTC is defending what is owned by CST.
Okay.
And if you write that all down sequentially on a piece of paper, it's crossword puzzle.
Yeah. Easily.
Yeah. This campus, the one that's in near Lake Arrowhead, it's like 500 acres. It's huge. It's a big campus and presumably quite a beautiful place if you've developed that much land for people to be at. Well, here's the thing. People refer to it, they call it the hole. As in when you're in prison and you're in the hole and you're in lockup, the hole.
That's not great.
Yeah.
No. It's considered a place that people go to and they don't come back. Anybody who's there, their mail and their phone calls are monitored. And I've seen pictures of the front gate, and it's shocking.
Yeah, I know.
Because it's a wrought iron fence, which you think is nice, but it's got spikes inward and outward, mostly inward, which would infer that you're keeping people in.
It sounds that way.
So, yeah, okay, well, let's go back to Brousseau. According to him, the CST headquarters, there's several buildings on this campus. They house workers, and those workers are archiving. There's vaults, as Joe had talked about in the beginning, where they're etching all of the words of L. Ron Hubbard and storing them in titanium boxes for future generations. There is also, I apologize. It's amazing.